overall.
Ko te ororo, Flavel.
Kia ora tātou katoa I tēnei ahi ai. Mr Speaker, I don't think it will be any surprise to the House that at the crux issue for the Māori Party is around the whole notion of the value of Māori representation on tertiary governance bodies, including mana whenua and Māori student representation as well. And to make it becomes more relevant, I suppose, in terms of some of the discussions that's been put in front of the House today, in particular around the feedback from the Select Committee, which amended the bill by deleting the 4 positions of representatives from the Academic Board, the Student and Community and Chief Executive positions. So there can be no doubt, I think, that by providing for only 1 community member, the chances of Māori representation on any Polytechnic council is pretty slim. And that for us is a real concern. The next question is, why is Māori representation such a significant issue? Well, it's pretty simple. Some have already set that out. It's about a treaty right. And to give that some context, the 1986 Royal Commission on the electoral system said, and I quote, that the Treaty of Waitangi marked the beginning of constitutional government in New Zealand. Under the terms of the treaty, the Crown formally recognised the existing rights of the Māori and undertook to protect them. It is in this sense that Māori people have a special constitutional status. So that's one part of the argument, sir, treaty right. While the bill has a requirement in section 1714A that it is, quote, desirable that the council of an institution should reflect, so far as is reasonably practicable, the ethnic and socio-economic diversity of the communities served by the institution. Sir, I'd have to say that it's a pretty toothless provision which disregards the constitutional significance of the Crown's relationship to Māori. I have to say also that the failure of successive governments to recognise and give effect to the treaty as a basis of constitutional government in New Zealand does not grant consent for subsequent governments to perpetuate the failure. And I need to tell this Parliament that the Māori Party will continue to keep the notion of treaty rights at the forefront of discussions about our nationhood, which are basically reflected in the relationship between Māori and Pākehā in this land. I'd have to say also, as the Māori Party, we gained a lot of confidence in our relationship agreement with the National Party, which said, quote, both the National Party and the Māori Party will act in accordance with the Treaty of Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi, and that, of course, is going to be an ongoing discussion. And having said that, of course, it just simply tells us with that and against all of this context, so that Māori representation is a treaty right which is appropriate in the context of our history and understanding of tangata whenua rights. Mr Speaker, the main concern with the bill, therefore, as I say, is the lack of Māori iwi treaty partnerships reflected in the arrangements, and I would expect that the Minister to be working with iwi entities at least to ensure that proper representation is enabled. Now, a part of that was that, I suppose when we spoke in the first reading about this, Māori representation in Polytechnics, as I say, stems from our status as mana whenua, mana of the land, guardians of the land, the seas, the harbours of the regions for centuries. And to put it in context, you know, Māori welcomed and gave a place to the settlers, expecting to live alongside them in respectful relationship. We all need to recognise that relationship today if we want to move into a positive future based on peaceful relationships between people and the land. And so, to wrap it all up, I suppose the unique status of Māori also requires that our values, norms, ways of doing things should also be reflected in all of our key institutions. It is about giving space to Māori culture, and that's what we've been asking for, not only with this bill, sir, but also the whole question about the Auckland Super City proposal. And it is important because giving space to Māori culture is about survival and about our ability to flourish in the only place in the world that is possible, Aotearoa, our home. Mr Speaker, many would not be aware that last Friday a hui was called at Te Noho Kotahitanga Marae, Unitec, Auckland, attended by representatives of iwi, hapu, whānau, marae, tangata tiriti from throughout the whole country. And at that hui, known as Te Hui o Te Kotahitanga, the participants pledged ongoing support to the mana whenua of Auckland Super City for dedicated seats. Now, a report from that hui concluded that it had reinforced the determination of Māori to support the legitimate right ana whenua of Tāmaki to have reserved seats as recommended by the Royal Commission and as supported by 80% of the public submissions on the super city. They concluded, sir, that a genuine treaty relationship would reflect equal 50-50 representation of tangata whenua and tauiwi at governance level. However, as a very minimum, there should be 3 guaranteed seats for Māori representation and, more importantly, mana whenua representation as recommended by the Royal Commission. So, in that regard, this discussion is not just about politics, it's in fact about a bigger picture, and as I say, the whole notion of treaty rights. So, how does all this discussion then relate back to the bill on Polytechnics? So I'm proud to speak to a bicultural partnership governance model for Polytechnics put together by the Waiariki Institute of Technology, Te Whare Tākiura o Te Waiariki, and I as local member I'm pleased to support the proposal. The proposal has been approved and strongly supported by the Māori Party, and we've actually referred it to the Minister of Education for consideration. The model proposes equal council appointments for Crown and Māori, with community appointments filling the balance of the required council positions. The model has a bicultural focus and proposes an active demonstration of treaty commitments. So the paper describes those commitments as the treaty relationship of partnership, the Crown's duty of active protection, and the duty to act reasonably and in good faith by meaningful participation, including the obligation to consult. The special relationship would be endorsed by formal recognition of representative tertiary education iwi authorities as legislated bodies. So what we're talking about is allowing iwi to have space to formalise agreements with the Crown, which basically allow iwi to set up their own forums and present proposals to these sorts of bodies. And I suppose they're, in a sense, legitimised by a rubber stamp from the Crown as well. Once the iwi authority is established by the iwi and the rohe, they would elect members for appointment to the Polytechnic councils. And of course, sir, if you didn't know, there are a number of polytechnics throughout the country who already follow this particular model. The recommendation is that the council then would comprise a minimum of 9 and a maximum of 12 members, 3 appointed by the minister after council input, 3 appointed by the representative tertiary education iwi authority, and up to 4 appointed by the people living in the community served by the Polytechnic. So I was pretty impressed by the model, as was the Minister of Māori Affairs, and we'll be introducing an SOP at the appropriate time, which I look forward to support from, in particular from Labour and the other parties. I take it on words from the comment of Ranginui Walker earlier this year, and I quote that the Waiariki Institute of Technology is a surrogate of the Crown. It has accommodated the tino rangatiratanga of Te Arawa and other tribes in the institution's catchment area by committing to a partnership with tangata whenua. And that, sir, should set the scene. They've been operating this way since the year 2000, and in their structure, Te Mana Mātauranga of Te Waiariki Trust represents the people of Te Arawa, Mātātua, Tainui, Waka, including Ngāti Raukawa, Ngāti Awa, Tūwhare, and other iwi whose ancestral homelands lie within this area. Their structure involves a joint committee of 5 council members and 5 from Te Mana Mātauranga. It is a unique bicultural model in a mainstream setting, the best of both worlds. In a practical sense, it aims to indigenise the curriculum and produce graduates who are culturally competent. So in conclusion, sir, there are other models of Māori representation such as Tairāwhiti and Whitireia Polytechnics, which reflect the quality of the relationship with local iwi, relationships which are formally recognised through direct council representation. Tairāwhiti Council, Polytechnic Council, for instance, has 4 community places held by Te Rūnanga o Ngāti Porou, Te Rūnanga o Turanganui a Kiwa, the Wairua Waikare Moana Trust Board, and the Māori Women's Welfare League. So, if the community viewpoint, including mana whenua, through its representatives is removed, the focus of governance decision-making under this bill will quite quickly become central government-based rather than regionally based. It is more important for central government to respond to community needs than it is for regions to respond to centralised requests. So, Māori representation is a treaty right, It is critical for robust decision-making and institutional success over the long term. It is critical for our capacity as a parliament to act in accordance with the Treaty of Waitangi. So we will, at this point, be supporting this bill. We will be introducing an SOP and reassess it at the appropriate time in the third.